patrons with money to burn. This is your cool mystery Aunt Liz, and I'm
And
here with.
your other cool mystery Aunt Samantha.
And before we get started on some reboot content, you may be aware how this podcast feels about people owning multiple boats. It's a case for the porpoise of justice, if you ask me. Today in American history is a bad day for people who own a bunch of boats. And I like that.
Which means it's a great day for us,
Yeah.
because this is the highest form of entertainment, if you ask me.
Someone's at home crying over their stonks, and man, oh man. Look, is it going to lead to something like change? No. Is it fucking hilarious right now, today? Yes.
I saw some meme on Twitter where it was like, millennials are going to ruin one company a day until they get their $2,000 a day until the end of the pandemic.
Let's do it. We've been accused of ruining so many businesses that are just shitty and haven't adapted to the times. And somehow that's like our fault for, I don't know, being poor and alive.
Yeah, are
So,
millennials ruining Cinnabons? Like,
yeah. I mean, I fucking hope I'm ruining Chili's. I'm coming for you. But it's like millennials don't use paper napkins, and it's like those things that are less absorbent than paper towels. No. Like, why would I do that? Anyway, but I think we should start doing it on purpose. I think
yeah.
after, yeah,
We
like,
kill one business a day until we get our $2,000
do
a
it.
month.
Take that, blood diamond industry. What business should we take out next, Samantha? Maybe we can get the 5 on board. What's
What?
something that you? I'm gonna say Axe body spray. Can we? Who's that made by?
I think it's just the Axe body spray company. We can take them
Oh,
down. Yeah.
take them down. Hilariously, my mom once had to go to the hospital because of Axe body spray.
Like, did she breathe too much of it?
Yes. Okay, so she was a teacher and she's kind of sensitive to fragrances. So she had asked her students specifically not to wear Axe body spray in her classroom. And so
Simple
what?
request.
Simple request, like, please, just like, don't do it. And one of her students, very obligingly decided, oh, I better leave my Axe body spray in my locker while I'm in Miss Walker's class, right? But it was like defective. It probably wasn't even like actual Axe body spray. It was probably like rip off Axe body spray. And it was defective, and the locker was right next to the classroom. So anyway, they were like, I don't know, in an assembly or something. They come back and the room is just full of like an entire can of Axe body spray. Her throat closed up.
Oh my god.
She couldn't breathe. They had to call an ambulance, and she was taken to the hospital.
Oh my god. That's horrible. I mean, it's like a gas leak except with Axe body spray.
Yes. And
Oh
I was
my
like,
god.
and as like horrible as that is, I was also like, only you, Mom. Only you would somehow get like injured by disgusting body spray. Like, good for you. So I feel like they came from my mom. Now I'm coming for you.
I think we could take down Axe body spray.
Can we take them down?
I can't think of Axe body. This reminds me a lot of this stupid documentary Travis and I watched on Netflix. For a while there, we were watching this documentary that was about like Big Egg and how it's like corrupt and evil and like I forget what that series was called because there's a few of them on Netflix. Anyway,
Sure.
we were served a recommendation for this other documentary that I honestly can't remember the name of it because we both absolutely hated it, but for some reason still watched the entire thing. It was just this guy who seems to be distrustful of chemicals for like reasons.
Sure.
Like I think we're all becoming more aware of these people given the circumstances in the world, which yeah, be just trustful of chemicals, like whatever, that's fine. But it was just like not scientific. It did not take a scientific approach. It was really the evidence that was put forward in the documentary was obviously suspect, like transparently suspect, to the point where we were like, "What are you talking about? How can you prove this?" Anyway, but they showed a few like case studies of people that had been harmed by chemicals, and one of them was this poor kid who was like your mom, like very sensitive to fragrances and like allergic to Axe body spray. And this poor kid like had to be taken out of school because too many kids in his middle school were wearing Axe body spray that he couldn't even go to school. And then they show him in the documentary when he returned to school and they had to have like a blanket ban on Axe body spray to the point where the principal was like over the loudspeaker welcoming him back to school and reminding people not to wear Axe body spray. And Travis and I were both just like, this kid's gonna get mercilessly bullied.
Yeah.
Like, mercilessly. We felt extremely bad for him. The whole thing felt, I mean, it was funny in a way. Like, it would be funny if it was fiction, but because it was this kid's, this
Right.
actual,
Right.
like middle school is such a horrible time. I cannot even imagine if the entire school knew that I had an Axe body spray allergy and they
And
were announcing it over the loudspeaker.
also, like, I wouldn't want my enemies to know that about me. Now they know his greatest weakness.
That's true. And
Oh.
it's easy, and it's an easy one.
Yeah, just spray some Axe body spray in that kid's face if he
Which,
wrongs you.
if we're being honest, aren't we all a little allergic to Axe body spray?
I mean, it's just gross.
It's so strong, and it doesn't smell good.
I like that we both had these, like, tales. That's so funny. You know what sucks? We're gonna have, like, we should have the opposite of sponsors, where each episode we're like, and
We
here's
just
a product.
shit on a product we hate.
Here's a product I don't trust. And then it's, I don't know, Velveeta or
Oh, gross.
or some other fucking thing. Okay. Oh, I should probably save I'll say this again in our regular episode, but I have a snack hour update.
Ooh, okay.
Which, you know how you go to the grocery store because those motherfuckers over at Oreo just keep inventing new shit, and you're like, oh.
I have to
Better.
try every novelty Oreo, even if it sounds like something I'm not gonna like. I just can't stop myself. I need to buy it.
They finally made one that's basically Nutella.
Okay, did you like it though? Because I had that one the other
Yes.
day and I was not a fan.
Really? Give me yours. Give me all of them. I can't
If
believe
I
you
ever
didn't
saw
like it.
you, I would give them to you. We also had
I ate
Java.
them so fast. I can't believe you didn't like them. The filling is like denser. It's like a different texture.
I feel like that might be why I didn't like it. We tried another one recently, which was Java, I think Java chip, like the ice cream, but in Oreo form, and not a fan. It was like Travis actually really liked it, but I thought the coffee flavor was kind of bitter. I don't know.
Yeah,
It felt
sure.
like Oreo had swung and missed twice, and I'm a little salty about it.
I can't believe you didn't like those hazelnut ones.
Actually, and I might just be bitter at Oreo because I was never able to find the gingerbread Oreos.
Oh, well, yeah, same.
Like, I wanted to try those so bad. Did I ever find them in any of the grocery stores I go to? No. So I don't know if those even existed, but I love gingerbread, and that sounds like my dream. Never found one.
Look, it's been a hard year.
We've all experienced hardships.
I guess I won't bring up this hazelnut Oreo thing now that I know you're not a fan, but I thought they were really fucking good.
I didn't hate them. I wouldn't buy them again.
Oh man, I was like, Mac, find these immediately. I need more.
There's a chocolate marshmallow out, I think, now. I don't know if that's new.
I liked them for years, decades. They had one flavor. And then at one point they were like, what if we put more stuff in it? And people were like, whoa, 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 I don't know if I can handle this. And now, yeah. And now it's like every week, it seems like.
Yeah, our insatiable demand for
more novelty Oreos. More
novelty flavors.
Oreos. Have you seen videos where they'll have like students in China try Oreos because it's such a like distinctive flavor that actually has nothing to do with chocolate, and people are just like, what is this?
I haven't seen those, but Travis loves to watch people in other countries try American snacks.
You should look for one if people try Oreos, because it really is like its own flavor. It has like no correspondence to anything else. And so people are just like, I don't know. And it's like, yeah, we've just indoctrinated ourselves from a very young age. That's like, yes, I will eat this sandwich cookie. And they're like, it's chocolate cookies. And you're like, no, it's not. It is Oreo.
Is there any chocolate in an Oreo cookie?
I have no idea.
It does not taste anything like chocolate. I don't know. They're fucking delicious, though.
I could go for some more right now, but I did eat all of them. Okay. Really, I just don't want to talk about this Unsolved Mysteries reboot. We got 2 episodes of the reboot. Can't even talk. we've got 2 episodes of the reboot left, and then we're done. And I don't know that Netflix is making any more, so because I think this second collection was a bit of a flop.
In a
People were
way,
really into the first one, and people were ready to solve those mysteries. And then this came out, and people were like, "Meh,
I heard no
meh,
hype about the second one, the
no."
second group. I don't know if they're going to do more. They haven't announced them. In a way, I wish we could go back and like have the good mysteries we had in the first season. Not that these ones were bad. They just didn't pull me in like the
It's not.
ones.
It's clearly these, particularly these last two, which I actually think the one I'm talking about, it's fine, but there's not like a ton to it. I feel like they're sort of like, well, and here's what we have left, and you're like, there's no other mysteries. That's it. I mean, you only did a few episodes since coming back, and they're like, yeah, everything else has been solved. These are the only mysterious things that are left in the world. Okay, so today I'm summarizing the Lady in the Lake case, which goes back to January 12th, 2010.
Don't you think Lady in the Lake sounds like it should be a ghost?
It kind of does. I mean, it's a title that's been used for various things. I think they just like couldn't resist. Also, it's not a lake; it's like a bay.
Yeah, it's a little bigger
So
than the lake.
it should have been called Lady in the Bay, I guess. Whatever. This seems lazy. So this takes place in Grosse Pointe Farms, Michigan, specifically around the St. Paul Catholic Church. This is the case of 55-year-old Joanne Matok Romaine, who disappeared that night, January 12th, 2010. So she was last seen attending a 7 p.m. prayer service at her church. By 9:20 that evening, a police car comes to the family home, and the cop says, "Hey, your mom's car has been found abandoned in the church parking lot. Is she missing?"
I
Which
don't
is
know. You tell me.
it is like a super unsettling question. Like, how would I like what? So she has 3 grown children that all lived with her. We hear mostly from her daughter Michelle, the oldest, who was 29 at the time. She also had a daughter Kelly, 27, and a son Michael, who's 20. We don't actually hear from Michael at all. I don't think we hear a little bit from Kelly. So her 3 grown children start trying to get a hold of her. There's no answer. Her phone is going straight to voicemail. We learned that their mom and dad were separated and didn't get along very well. So, maybe that's a possible factor in the disappearance. Uh, this is a very close knit family. We hear a lot from Joanne's brother, John. So the children go to the church to see like what's going on, like what are you talking about, my mom is missing. Crime scene tape is up around her car, which is parked in the church driveway. That's kind of an important factor. The
Mhm.
car is locked with her purse still inside. There's all these Coast Guard people there, and divers and helicopters, and things seem to be like very escalated considering she's been missing for, I don't know, a couple hours, an hour.
Well, and they called to ask if she was missing.
Right, no one's reported her missing. It's interesting because we have looked at these cases, albeit they're usually older cases, where someone goes missing and people are like, come back in 48 hours. Like,
Right.
we're not looking into this. This woman is missing. She leaves the church at like 7:20, I think, and by 9:20, cops are like, is your mom missing? I don't know. I'm expecting her to come home any minute. Like, you tell me.
Right,
So anyway,
exactly.
so they get to the church and they see that already this huge search is underway, and they ask like, what the fuck is going on? And they're like, oh, we think your mom committed suicide by walking over to that bay over there, which is over this like highway that has 2 lanes of traffic and like a median and all this stuff. And the kids are like, really? Okay, this woman was 55, so she's a little younger than my mom is now. But I'm just like picturing my mom. This woman is wearing high-heeled boots, like 4-inch high-heel boots. It's snowy. It's dark. It's icy. She would have to cross this 2-lane street, go across a snowy median, cross another busy street, and then walk down this like broken cement embankment that has fucking like rebar sticking out of it. It's at a really steep angle. It's covered in ice. And to even get in the water, you have to like get over these like rocks. and other bits of rebar and shit to even get to the water, which is only a couple feet deep anyway.
This makes no sense. And given the fact that there is no body, how they came to this conclusion, I have no idea. Also, before this, she was just like at church, right? Like just doing her normal thing. It sounds like
Yeah,
some shit out of Bird Box where it's normal people just decide that they're gonna go like
right,
it,
right.
it makes no sense. It doesn't surprise me at all that her kids are skeptical of this.
No, I would be extremely skeptical too, because it's implying that she goes to the church service, she prays, she comes out to her car, she sees the water, which is also partially frozen, by the way. Doesn't seem very easy to like drown yourself in, and is like, that's the way to go. I'm gonna do that right now. Which I realize that suicidal thoughts are very intense and can be very sudden, but there's actually like no warning signs. There's nothing to suggest this at all. The police are basing this theory entirely on the fact that there are some footprints in the snow and what they describe as butt prints, where someone like sat down to slide down the embankment. And we'll get to, we're not at the part where they talk about this in the episode yet, but they didn't actually take like proper forensic photographs of those footprints, so we have no idea of knowing there was her footprints. They're just literally footprints.
Yeah.
They could be any. It could be a dog's, basically. Like,
Also,
I don't know that we have proof that it's a woman, or that it's a high heel shoe, or that
that's what I was gonna say is that high heeled boots would have a pretty distinct footprint. So
one cop thought it was a small high heeled boot, but we can't even see a picture of them to confirm that. And I think the problem with that is that they so quickly assumed this is a suicide that they don't really bother taking a lot of evidence. Okay, so we hear yeah, okay. So it's really cold out. The water's partially frozen. The police say that there's no signs of a struggle. I kind of debate that later with some evidence that we come up with, but there's no sign of a crime. Like, her purse is still in the car. Nothing's been spilled. It doesn't look like anything's been taken. It doesn't look like a robbery, right? But there's also no evidence that she committed suicide either.
there's no evidence at this point that she's even dead.
Yeah, I don't know, could have gone with a friend from church to get coffee and forgot her purse. I realize that doesn't sound super likely, but it's more likely to me than she decided to kill herself in this frozen bay.
She's been gone for a few hours. There is no body, no sign of a struggle at this point, no blood. Like,
There's nothing. She's just
if,
gone.
if I was her kids, I'd be like, how do you know she's dead?
Yeah, why are you acting like she's dead? Why, like, what if this is a kidnapping? What if,
Yeah.
yeah, there's so many other possibilities. What if she's just fine and this is a big misunderstanding? Well, sadly, that's not the case, but I don't feel like there's any evidence at this point, and they've already got like dive teams out there. We hear someone say at a press conference that the car had no usable fingerprints, just smudges, and that they didn't check her purse for prints, which is frustrating. Now we get an explanation from the daughter Michelle that Grosse Pointe is a very wealthy, tight-knit community. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's in everybody else's business. And she was very well known in that community, particularly with people from her church. So the idea that just like no one sees her is weird because everybody knows her.
Yeah.
So there's an extensive 3-day search around the water, which the water is described as being very shallow, clear, and having no current, as well as being partially frozen. Joanne is last seen wearing all black. She's wearing a black coat, shirt, shoes, pants, everything. So she should have been in this clear, shallow water, very easy to see. And this diving team guy is like, it's the most exhaustive search I've ever been a part of. And all we found was water and ice. So this went on for 3 days. So they actually don't have any evidence that she's entered the water. They just, someone walked on some snow. Like, that's all we have. And her daughter, Michelle, it says, this is like on a news broadcast or something. We're talking about a woman who went to church and cooked. That's all she did. Like, this isn't a woman that you would think of as having enemies. She seems like she was really well beloved. Just like, just like an active mom, right?
Right.
Her children are also suspicious because she was a devout Catholic and suicide would have been against her beliefs. I don't know that really sways me. I'm sure people who are devout Catholics commit suicide, but there's no signs of depression. There's not a suicide note. There's actually no reason to think that either. Her friends are all describing her as upbeat and also someone who would never leave her children. She has 3 children, even though they're grown, living at home with her. is she really just going to bail on them? Like, that's her whole life.
Without at least leaving a note?
For, like, apparently no reason. It's not like things were now going so wrong. They were going to lose the house. Or, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
So the children hire a private investigator to look into her disappearance. They hire a few different private investigators. This is the first one we hear from. He has a very unsettling mustache. And honestly, I don't even think it deserves a name. It's too short. It's gray. It's like spiky and short. I just hate it.
Not a fan.
He is explaining that once police officers decide a situation is a suicide, they effectively stop looking at other possibilities. So as soon as these officers got to the scene, saw footprints, decided it was a suicide, they don't do things like fingerprint the purse because they've kind of already made up their mind the direction that this is going. And so they're not like, I don't know, looking for other vehicles in the area that might have kidnapped her or something like that. Their whole focus is on searching the bay.
Yeah.
And that's when he talks about how to take proper forensic photographs of footprints, you need to take them straight up above at a 90-degree angle with a ruler for scale so that they can be compared to other shoes. And he was like, this is super basic. Like every cop learns how to do this. Well, that wasn't done in this case. So we don't actually have any way of determining that those are her shoes. At this point, the private investigator makes some random woman put on high-heeled boots and walk down this steep embankment to prove that it would be difficult. And it's kind of humorous because even just when you look at the embankment, you're like, yeah, I wouldn't do that in heels. Because the odds that you would just fall flat on your face and then slide down seem pretty high.
Yeah, you're gonna break your ankle.
Yeah, you're not if your goal is to die, you're just gonna have a broken ankle or an arm or something because you like put your wrist out trying to stop yourself.
Yeah.
Like it's steep, and the woman that's doing it, it's not even like cold and icy anymore. It's a warmer time of year, but she had trouble just like walking in it at this like steep cement. I don't know. It's ridiculous. We hear a lot from her oldest child, Michelle, and because she's the oldest, she sort of felt like she had to take the investigation into her own hands. So she talks with the Unsolved Mysteries a lot, and it's very composed, very like no nonsense.
She's got her shit in order.
Yes, I don't think I would be able to talk about something like this so calmly, but she clearly has a great like presence of mind for the facts of the case and just things that like don't seem like her mother. Like her mother seems like a very cautious person, not a person that would go wander around on an icy embankment in high heels, right?
Yeah.
Also, we learned that, so they're trying to track her movements the night of her death, and we learned that on the night that she goes to church, she got gas first, which one of the private investigators later is like, that's weird. Why does she fill up her tank if she's just going to commit suicide? Like, what does she care?
Yeah, it's a like, pretty good point.
I better leave my car here while I go kill myself, but I got to make sure it's got a full tank of gas. She is seen by witnesses leaving at 7:15 when the prayer service ended. Now we hear from a different private investigator, and his first thing was, oh, we've got to get the phone records, which I was kind of like, that didn't happen already? Okay. But it turns out that she's been calling a security company. Now, this part of the episode I thought was kind of vague.
Yeah.
I wish we had more specifics. Like, we don't hear from the security company. I don't know if she had hired security or she was just getting advice or something. But she is frequently calling a security company. And the private investigator says that she seemed to think she was being followed. I don't understand why that can't be confirmed, like the person she talked to or whatever.
Yeah, call a security company.
That was very confusing to me. But so she seemed to think she was followed, but she didn't want to tell her family what was bothering her. Like she didn't want to worry them or drag them into the situation.
This is something that my mom would fucking do. That was the first thing I thought is that it would not surprise me at all if my mom one day was just like, oh yeah, for the last like 6 months I feel like I am being stalked. Like she would not want to, she wouldn't, I didn't want to bother you or inconvenience you. It sounds like peak mom behavior.
She's like, but the good news is that he got hit by a semi, and I can tell you now because it's not a worry anymore. And you're just like, oh my God, where did all of this come from? Yes, peak mom behavior. So she had a part-time job at a boutique, and her coworkers report that on the 7th or 8th of that month, she started to receive a number of phone calls while she was at work, which was unusual, and she would step away to talk to whoever was on the phone. So they don't know what those phone calls were, but it was a change in her behavior. Weirdly, we don't like ever hear this private investigator got the phone records. Like, who's calling her? Don't know.
Yeah, what's the
Um,
point of having them? Look
yeah,
into it a little bit.
I have no idea. She was apparently concerned that someone was going through her mail, and she also thought that her phone might be tapped. I, yeah. All right. So after Joanne left the church, a witness did hear a car alarm. I feel like this information could have been conveyed in a more like straightforward way. Like we keep kind of bouncing through time and space. It's like, okay, we're hearing about how she got phone calls. Now we're like back to the car at the church parking lot. It's like, all right, but so a witness did hear a car alarm shortly after Joanne leaves the church. Is that a struggle of her getting into the car? Is that her accidentally setting it off? Hard to say. But the the witness is leaving the church. It's very dark. She's being cautious about walking to her car in the dark, and she does look both ways and remembers, checking out her surroundings, leaving the church. And Joanne's car was not in the driveway at that time. So if that witness is reliable, that suggests that the car was moved. That also she probably wouldn't have parked there like for the service. It's not the parking area, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit of an unusual place to find the car.
So it seems like she was parked in the parking lot and something happens. Her car is moved to the driveway, which is kind of a more prominent spot where it would be found. This now we jump forward to March 20th when her body is found by two fishermen on Below Island in Ontario. This is 35 miles away. So now we're hearing from yet another private detective, and he doesn't buy this story. So for the police's official report to make sense, her body has gone in the water at this very shallow, no current bay, been pulled into the Detroit River, and then traveled 30 miles into Canada without anyone seeing it, despite having this like massive dive search and helicopters and all that.
And again, most of the water is frozen.
Yeah, it's also like, at least by the church, very stagnant and full of like rocks and stuff. Like it's not flowing. Whatever. So that is leading the private detective to think her body is actually dumped in the water in Detroit into the Detroit River, which would make sense. We hear from the coroner that her time of death cannot be definitively determined due to decomposition, but she had been in the water for a while. So it doesn't seem like she was alive much after she disappeared, but it's also kind of hard to say. The cause of death is ruled as undetermined because while it's probable that she drowned, we don't actually know that for sure. She could have been dead before she went into the water. There's no signs of trauma to the body, except that there are two bruises on her upper left arm, which they said was pre-mortem. At this point, the daughter Michelle brings out her purse, the purse that was found in the car. She apparently had brought this purse 6 weeks previously. She refers to it as a designer purse, which makes me think it was like, I don't know, expensive. Like her mom would have been proud of it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's torn. Like this purse is, ugly. And it has, it's just like a big row of ruffles. Very 2010. And one of those, the like top ruffle has been basically like totally torn off. And there's all these threads hanging from it now. And what her daughter points out is, so she carried her purse on her left shoulder. Her bruise is on her left arm. So it seems like someone grabbed her by her arm and in the process tore her handbag.
It seems like it. Purses don't just rip. Even like unless you use a purse to death, it's not going to just be ripped like this purse is ripped. And it seems like she just got this.
I'm just going to say, okay, from the like description of this being a very wealthy community and the shots of their house and stuff like that, I'm taking it that Joanne was a little high maintenance. And I'm guessing she doesn't walk around with a torn up, ripped up purse.
No.
She works at a boutique. She could get a new purse with her employee discount. Like what? That it just doesn't. I think her children would know better, but it doesn't sound like her style to me. Also, her car keys are found on her body, zipped up in a pocket. Michelle found this strange because like every zipper on the coat is zipped, including the front zipper, the like main zipper, is zipped all the way up to her chin. And she was like, "Yeah, that's weird because my mom didn't zip her coat." And I
And
think
even people that do zip their coats, like,
all the way up to your chin, never,
yeah.
never. And I do think that's something like family would know. Like that's not really evidence per se, but I totally understand why the daughter's like, "That's not right. That's not something my mom would do."
Also, are all of the zippers on your winter coat zipped up, or do you just you
No.
unzip them once and never zip them up again?
Yes. Also,
So
she was in theory just walking from the church to her car.
yeah,
Like she doesn't need to zip up her coat. You know what I mean? Like you just put it on and leave, and then she'll be in
exactly.
her car and warm up in a second.
Yep.
I do think that that's weird. Um, Also, her shoes are in very good shape considering they supposedly like went down this concrete embankment and over this rebar. And you're telling me both of those heels are still on there? None of that leather got
Scratched.
scratched. Yeah, I don't know. So the family firmly believes she was abducted, pushed into her own car, taken somewhere to be dumped into the Detroit River, and then the car is returned to the church but not put back in the same spot.
Seems completely plausible.
So now we talk about some possible suspects. One is her ex-husband that was the father of her children. They apparently got divorced because he was very argumentative, and eventually Joanne just got sick of it, and she was like, "I want to be living a happier life without you around yelling at me all the time." Fair.
Yep.
Makes sense to me, but he was not happy about it. Police look into that, and I'm not sure if he had an alibi or there's just like literally no evidence connecting him to the crime. So this is the one part that was like, huh, I didn't see that coming. Michelle suggests that maybe people were trying to get back at the brother John. So we've heard a little bit from John in that episode. The two of them were very close. He often went to Joanne for advice. It seemed like they talked on a regular basis. They were kind of a duo. However, John had some debts. And this is what he says about it. I owed a lot of money to certain people.
Okay.
It's one of the more suspicious sentences I've heard. He talks about how this is, 2010 housing crisis time. He had money tied up in real estate things, as rich people do, and a lot of those deals went sour. But it seems like the people he was making those deals with were not on the up and up, because we now get a clear answer on who these certain people are. So, is it possible that someone was mad at John and decided to kill the person most important to him, his sister Joanne? It's possible. Michelle's number one suspect, however, is a cousin in the family, Tim Matuk, who is a cop.
Hmm.
The two of them had a strange relationship dating back to a death in the family in 94 and a following lawsuit over a substantial inheritance. So an inheritance is left, is supposed to be split 5 equal ways among these cousins. I guess it's not done appropriately. It left people with a lot of bad blood. And they had a bitter phone argument shortly before her disappearance, where she was heard saying things like, "How did you get this phone number? Never call me here again," blah, blah, blah. After she hangs up on him, she turns to her daughter, Michelle, and says, "If something ever happens to me, look into Tim."
Huh. Interesting.
So at this point, we have a woman who apparently was afraid she was being followed, right? Afraid for her safety, contacting a security company, and specifically having this family feud with a guy who's a cop who, I don't know, might have the power to manipulate certain situations or, I don't know, searches. He was also specifically asked by the family not to attend the funeral. However, there was no evidence linking him to the disappearance or the death. This is pretty much where the episode ends. We learned that Michelle tried to sue the city for conspiracy for covering up her mother's murder, but the case was dismissed. The judge just said something about like, "Okay, this is weird, but you don't get to sue the city."
Yeah, the problem is I mean, there's no evidence. So the problem with
Right.
that is, does it look suspicious as hell? Yes, but is there concrete evidence? No. And that doesn't help us solve the case. It doesn't help her lawsuit. It doesn't help anyone. There's just not a lot
She
that
just kind of vanished. And I don't think the police did a great job of collecting evidence, so there's not a lot to go on. I did look into this a little bit more, and I found out something interesting about that lawsuit, which was that a witness actually supposedly saw Tim at the church at the time of Joanne's appearance.
Huh.
But this was not known until the discovery phase of the civil lawsuit.
Our system works great.
Yeah. He said that no one came back to talk to him about it for 2 years.
Cool.
Like,
Cool.
he came forward as a witness, and then people were like, "Okay, we'll call you when we need you," and never got back.
Can
And
we at
eventually,
least check into his alibi? Where was he this night? Like,
okay, so that I know. So he is a police officer. He was apparently working on some narcotics sting that night, and can be accounted for by the police department as like sitting in a car, like watching a building or whatever.
okay, sure. Okay, sure he was. Sure he was.
Yeah. The other
Alone? Was he alone in this car? Did he have a partner? He was in a car somewhere.
supposedly all of his time can be accounted for.
Okay.
That to me doesn't even say, like, would he do this himself personally?
Well, that's a good point.
But this witness did see him at the church.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing I saw, this was on screenrant.com, probably a very reputable website, said that private planes have been hired in the area with, you know, those planes that like carry banners behind them that say like, "Samantha, will you marry me?"
Yeah.
Someone in the Grosse Pointe area has hired planes to pull banners accusing Tim and Bill of murder.
Okay.
So they'll be carrying slogans like, "Wait till the public finds out who you really are," and also asking why both of them have refused to take a lie detector test.
I mean, it's a good question.
This is sad and horrible. I feel very bad for this family. They're clearly really broken up about the death of Joanne, backbone of their family. Honestly, clearly beloved. The idea of these are also possibly money is no object people. They've hired 3 different private investigators. I don't know. But the idea that you're going to air your family laundry by hiring private planes to fly accusatory banners, I love it so much.
That's the kind of petty that I really admire.
It's so, like, that's me with money, bitch. When I wake up as a cast on Bling Empire, someone's gonna be looking out their window and it's gonna be like, "How dare you make fun of me in the 7th grade?" And they're gonna be like, "What?" Yeah. That's all the extra information I can find. Basically, the internet thinks Tim did it, but there's no evidence, so he's probably gonna get away with it.
I can't say I disagree with the internet.
It seems like that Tim and John possibly together had some financial thing that didn't work out. Like, people didn't get their money from this inheritance. John owed people some money. Maybe Tim was involved with that too. I'm not really sure. But that it was seen that Joanne had taken John's side. Like, the two of them were very close. I mean, Tim's her cousin. John's her brother.
Right.
Kind of makes sense to me. She would take John's side. But it was seen as sort of the two of them were acting against him. People have also theorized, of course, that Tim and John were working together. One thing John says that you could interpret as suspicious is he hypothesizes that the people weren't intending to kill her. They were just intending to scare her. And
why do you think that?
You go, how would you know that? It's a little odd. We also hear, I think I forgot to mention, that 2 things are missing, which again leads me to go, this is not suicide. Her cell phone is not recovered, and the rosary she would have had from the church service is not recovered. Both of those should have been in her coat pocket and weren't. And you could be like, but Liz, those just, floated away in the bay. Except
they were all zipped up.
It's all zipped up. So that seems unlikely. But okay, so Joanne's rosary is missing. We see John with a rosary that his sister gave him.
Huh.
Now, is that the same rosary? Probably not. But in a movie, it definitely would be.
It's true.
I mean, in real life, there's a lot of rosaries. I'm sure members of that family each had more than one. But we get a dramatic, like, close-up shot of him, doing the thing with beads. I don't know what that's called.
Yeah.
So you go, oh, do you have her rose? Is that the souvenir from your dead sister? It's probably not, but it does seem like John was probably a little mobbed up. Whether or not that led to his sister's death, hard to say. Though he was also like, well, if that's why, that's really out of my control. And I was like, you should feel worse about it if that is why.
Yes, you should.
If your bad real estate deals with some loan sharks or whatever ended up with your sister dead, just don't be like, well, that wasn't my goal. Like, of course not.
You should still probably feel guilty about it.
Yeah.
Just a little.
He was really, really ready to be like, well, this isn't my fault. Not me, John.
Well, it's not your fault either, John. Okay.
It's a little long, I'll say. It could probably be 10 minutes shorter.
Yeah, that's kind of been the theme of this latest group of episodes. And this next one, while important, and I'm glad the story is being told, I don't want to talk about it. And
I don't either.
I'm not going to solve this case, so I kind of don't even want to watch it. I actually hadn't watched it. I watched all the episodes except this one because I knew what the title was, and I knew a lot of people said it was sad, and I was like, I don't need this in my life. Am I going to solve this case? Probably not. So I'm just, you know what? I don't need this to weigh on my heart forever. But here we are.
In Harlem in the 80s? No. Do I have any evidence that pertains to this case? No. Do I want to be super, super depressed during a pandemic? Not really. Yes, I put this off until last night, and then literally I was like, well, we're recording this tomorrow, Liz. You have not managed to rip that Band-Aid off. You have managed to keep reapplying it and just ever so slowly. Yeah. But here we are. This is not going to be fun or funny.
No, there's
probably
nothing
not even enjoyable. But
No.
we have a job to do. So here we are.
Somehow we've committed. I will say I normally take for Patreon episodes, I normally take at least 4 pages of notes. I only took 2 for this one. So I think
literally none.
I think this is going to be short. I think mainly I just wanted to get through it as fast as I could. So we're going to go through the synopsis, but it's going to be quick. So don't worry.
And here's what I'm going to say is that starting this podcast was a mistake because if we hadn't started this podcast, we wouldn't have had to watch this. We could have gone about our lives.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that. Okay, so this episode is titled Stolen Kids. What a way to end this season.
At least warn us. I'll appreciate that. It's not like you're like, oh shit, this is about stolen kids. No, you know not to click on it for months.
Yeah. I mean, it's true. They at least gave us a heads up. So we're in, like Liz said, Harlem, and it's 1989. Mary Murphy is a reporter who tells us that it was a rough period in New York's history. There were a lot of assaults, a lot of violence. She calls it a, quote, bad time.
It didn't look fun.
No, no. This is the case of 2 missing children. Rosa Glover is the mom of one of the boys. She was a Harlem resident at the time. She may still be. I'm not totally sure. This episode does leave me with quite a few questions. So,
yeah.
I didn't feel like I needed to look into the answers to most of them. But she was a Harlem resident then. She may still be now. I'm not really sure. But she does tell us that there was a lot of drug use in the area. She specifically references people running down the street naked. So if that helps paint a picture. Ken Lindahl.
But not in a fun way.
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point. Yeah. It wasn't a fun type of running through the streets naked.
That first season of Law and Order where it's like much grittier and the camera moves and stuff. That's what this all looks like. It's like footage of New York after their government has completely failed them. Ta-da! And now this is all inhabited by literal millionaires. So how things have changed.
Yeah. Ken Lindahl is a police detective, and he describes Harlem as having a lot of decent folks who were just trying to survive despite the violence that surrounded them, and that seems to be the case for these 2 families. Allison Dansby lived with her mother and her extended family in the same building in the same complex. This is Martin Luther King Towers in central Harlem. Allison was 26, and she had 2 children, Levon, who was 3, and Christopher, who was 2. Christopher's nickname was Choo Choo. It's so cute, and I kind of can't handle it. So the boys were very attached to their mother. Christopher was a very cuddly baby who was starting to say words like mama, and he was at that age where he didn't really want to be separated from his mother.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I'm not sure what Carolyn's relation to Allison is, but I know that she lived in the same building. I think she lived in the same building. They were friends at least. She's on the screen. She's referred to as Christopher's aunt, but she describes Christopher as being basically not wanting to leave his mom. So basically, what she's implying is that he wouldn't just walk off and
Oh
go with
no.
some.
No.
Um, anyway, so it's Thursday, May 18th, 1989. Allison and Carolyn go to the park with Christopher because it's a nice spring day. It wasn't too hot. It seemed like just one of those beautiful days where there was a ton of people at the park. This was I think this was in the evening around 5 p.m. They were there with a group of other people that included Allison's mother and I think 5 people in total, although we're not told exactly who else was there, probably family members. So they had this routine where they would run to the store and get, I think, probably just snacks for the kids. So Allison decides to do that, and she leaves Christopher playing at the park with her mother and Carolyn and the rest of the group of people. She was gone for about 30 minutes, and when she returns to the park, Allison finds her mother and the group, but she does not see Christopher. So she asks where he is, and they say, "Well, he's over there." But she looks around, doesn't see him, and immediately panics, as you can imagine that you would,
Yeah.
because he's only 2 and he's literally just vanished. And this is a crowded park. No one has any idea where he went. They run around calling his name, trying to find him, and he is nowhere. She kind of immediately knew that something was wrong and called the police. Ken says that he and his fellow officers rushed to the scene, understanding that the first few hours are critical. And unlike a lot of missing children that we've seen in at least old episodes, there seems to have been a strong and intense search for Christopher. And
I
later,
think it's his age. I
yeah, I
think
do.
it's because he's only 2. Well, unfortunately, we've seen in a lot of other unsolved mysteries cases is even if a kid is like 10, 11, they'll decide, oh, they probably left of their own free will. They
Right.
wanted to run away. He's fucking 2. He's not going anywhere.
Exactly. And I think the idea too is if he wandered off, there was a body of water nearby, like he could easily and very quickly, like kids move so fast, and he could
Oh my
easily and
god,
quickly
yeah.
get into something that could endanger his life. So they immediately rushed to the scene. They performed an initial canvass of the area. They went building by building, but unfortunately, this complex was huge. There was 10 towers and
Yeah.
14 floors each. So tons of people around. Even though they did the best they could, there was no way that they could visit every house or every residence in this area. So Ken says that the police set up a 24-block search radius. They sent divers into a nearby lake in case he had wandered off and fallen into the water. The search of the water found nothing, however. Dogs were brought in and they picked up the scent from a piece of clothing of Christopher's, and they did follow it for a few blocks but then lost it, which doesn't bode well. Like maybe he got into a car or something.
Yeah.
Not great. The police ruled out the family as suspects. Christopher's father was living in Florida at the time and really wasn't in Christopher's life at all. And he actually did, to his credit, travel to New York and talk to the police, and they ruled him out. He wasn't anywhere
Yeah.
near there. Ken tells us that they considered, quote, drug related problems because Allison had used drugs in the past. I don't even know what that means.
There's no ransom demand or something.
No, there's no ransom at all in either of these cases. So it's literally like he just vanished into thin air.
It's not like we hear she owed people money or something like that.
Yeah,
Just she was a drug user.
yeah.
Okay. Like,
Which so are lots of people.
yeah, I don't. There's not a straight line between that and a 2-year-old disappearing. It's not. She also doesn't have any money.
No, and
Like,
she wasn't even there.
what are you
So
gonna ransom the kid for? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
So that's Christopher's case. Next, we get the second case, which is Rosa Glover and her son Shane. So Rosa tells us that she did not know that Christopher had disappeared from the park just weeks earlier. If she had, she probably wouldn't have taken him there. But they were pretty close together. Shane Glover was 19 months old at the time. Rosa says that she didn't think she was able to have children, so Shane seemed like a miracle. He was also the cutest little baby. They show
So
photos of
cute.
him, and it's really cute, and it's gonna break your heart. So on her days off work, Rosa would take Shane to this park. On this day, two kids about the age of 10 and 6, a boy and a girl, came up to Rosa and insisted that they wanted to play with Shane. At first, she was kind of like, fuck off. But eventually, she was like, you know what, fine, you can play with him. And she went to sit on a bench. As she sat down, another man, like moments after she sat down, a man sat next to her. She turned to look at him for just a brief moment, and when she turned back to the park, Shane was gone that fast.
It's heartbreaking because of course, okay, most parents at the park are sitting on a bench watching their kids. That's not unusual at all. And of course, if a man sits down next to you on a bench, you're going to turn and look and see who that is.
Yeah,
She's taking her eyes off her kid for seconds.
it's sort of a natural, like, who are you?
Uh,
Who are you and why
like,
are you sitting next to me?
yeah,
Yeah, so, and it seemed like literally a split second that she looked away.
it's horrible.
Um, so Rosa got up and saw that the two kids had must have left the park because at this point they were running back into the park, and she demands to know what they did with her son, to which they said, we left him in the park. She panics and runs around yelling for Shane. Other park goers help her look, but he's nowhere. At this point, the police become even more concerned because now two boys around the same age disappeared from the same park on the same day of the week. It was Thursday, and it was around the same time. I think one of them went missing at 5 p.m. and the other went missing at 7 p.m. It was also broad daylight, and there was tons of people, and no one had seen
Yeah.
anything.
It's because
So,
so much is going on. Like, you would probably be more weary to be at a park that's empty,
right.
but it would be easy to see what was happening. If it's a sunny day and people are out there having a nice time, kids are playing, whatever, like, it's busy. There's a lot of activity. Nobody notices someone walking off with a kid, even if that kid is screaming their head off.
Yeah, and there's also just this brazen aspect of it too that makes it like
Oof.
somehow even more chilling than it already is, which is a which
It's
is a
just
high
it's
bar.
such a literal nightmare. It's
Yeah,
such a literal nightmare that to be like, oh, there's my kid having a nice time. Who's sitting next to me? Oh, wait, where'd my kid go? Like,
yeah,
that's how fast it seemed to happen.
so fast. So, like Christopher, there was a massive search, but nothing. But it turned up nothing. There was no signs of Shane. This is weird. In the episode, they show that they knocked down a building, and I think Ken describes how they even knocked down a building and didn't find anything. And at the time of watching the episode, I didn't understand why they did that, but then I Googled it, and apparently Rosa had received an unsettling phone call that said that he was buried under a building.
Oh my
Um,
god.
it seems like maybe that was a practical joke. Honestly, we've seen this before because they tore down a building and didn't find any sign of him. Um, so yeah, I know. So Rosa blames herself naturally. She is convinced that the two kids assisted the kidnapper. They were interviewed by the police, their parents were interviewed, and there seemed to be no indication that they were involved, but it's not out of the question that they couldn't have.
I
I,
kind of think they were.
it's weird. It's very weird because who wants to play? What 10-year-old wants to play with a 2-year-old?
Exactly. Older children don't want to play with little baby children.
Little, like, baby. Like, it's not even just like a younger kid. It's like a baby.
He could barely talk.
Yeah.
Like, what are they gonna? That's not someone a 2-year-old. A 10-year-old doesn't want to play with a 2-year-old. You have to make a 10-year-old do something like that. So the fact that they're like begging to play with this kid is odd.
Yeah. It's extremely suspicious to me. And it honestly would, if they lured him out of the park, that would make more sense as to why no one noticed
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
happened that fast. So it honestly makes sense, but there's no evidence, and the police did rule them out because they didn't admit to anything. Um,
And
but
just
it's
the
weird.
timing of that guy then sitting on the bench, it just seems choreographed.
Yeah, it does. They interviewed him, and the police ruled him out as well, but they didn't say why. It's very, it's like too coincidental almost. Um,
Yeah.
So at this point, a $100,000 reward was issued and a special task force was created. Police vans even drove around the neighborhood blaring pleas to the public to call their hotline with any tips or information about these two cases. But nothing ever turns up. And at this point, there's speculation as to the motive of the kidnapper. So who took these boys and and why did they take them?
Yeah.
Ken says that obviously the worst case scenario would be a pedophile and or serial killer. Fortunately, we don't have any evidence that that is the case, but we don't have any evidence of really anything. So sadly, who knows? The media at the time does start to speculate that there might be a baby selling ring operating in Harlem. Unfortunately, there's no evidence to point in that direction either. But Ken does say that's pretty unlikely. Like, to get someone to buy a kid is like, it just seems like a media sensation type of thing. Like, oh, they're selling babies. Like, that's something that doesn't actually happen.
It
So,
seems unlikely that there would only be 2 and that
right.
they would be from the same park. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. And you think you would steal an actual baby, but maybe that's harder. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
So the police did tap the phones in Allison's home, and 2 officers came every day, but no, like we said, no ransom was ever called in. There was also no ransom for Shane. So this is frustrating because there's no leads and no evidence. The area was heavily populated, so it's not surprising in a way that the boys simply vanished into thin air. Um, yeah, the conclusion they come to in the episode is that the boys were taken by someone who couldn't have children of their own. It sounds far-fetched, honestly, but in a way it does make a little bit of sense because these boys were at an age where they wouldn't remember. So
Right.
in theory they could be raised by someone else and never know that they had actually been kidnapped, and that leads us to the last part of this episode, which covers Carlina White, which I'll just briefly
This is
um
supposed to give you some hope.
yes.
I don't know
So
that it really works, but that's its intent.
yeah, and also I think just to maybe add some time onto the episode a little bit, they did so the Center for Missing and Exploited Children um has been in contact with these 2 families for years. There's this really sad scene at the end where like every year they put an age progressed photo of missing
Mm.
children on this Christmas tree, and they'll age progress it 1 year, and then they send the ornaments to the families. So Rosa has all of these, like,
Oh my
I'm doing
god.
scare quotes, pictures of her son growing up, but it's in age progressed photos. It's like the saddest thing you can literally imagine. Is she has this like case, this bookcase that's just full of these photos of like ostensibly her son growing up, but it's in age progressed photos. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they work with the family and they want to highlight this case of Carlina White. So I'm reading this article in Marie Claire, which is titled "What Happened to Carlina White." She basically solved her own kidnapping, which is kind of amazing. So White was separated from her parents in 1987. Um, and she wasn't reunited until 2011, and it makes hers the longest child abduction case to be solved in the Center for Missing and Exploited Children's history, as well as the first in which the kidnapping victim led to the reunification. So Bob Lowry is the guy in the episode, and he says that White was abducted from New York City's Harlem Hospital in August 1987 when she was just 19 days old. Joy White and Carl Tyson had brought their newborn daughter to the hospital after she developed an infection and had a high fever. Within hours, she was smuggled out of the hospital by a woman named Anne Petway. Petway had been loitering around the facility for at least a few weeks, if not months, before the abduction. She had been dressed as a nurse and interacted with White's parents upon their arrival at the hospital. White was discovered missing early the morning of August 4th, and a security guard reported having seen a woman matching Petway's description leaving the hospital around 3:30.
Did this
3:30 a.m.
hospital not notice that someone dressed like a nurse who wasn't working there was just hanging out?
I guess for potentially months, just like looking for a baby to steal.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So Petway raised White as Nedra Nance, nicknamed Nettie, in Bridgeport, Connecticut, with the help of her own mother. White told New York Magazine in 2011 that while Petway was somewhat distant, she was a responsible caregiver. Her quote is, "I'm not going to say she was the best mom ever, but she did what she had to do to make me who I am. She was strict, but
Okay.
she was cool. All my friends used to say she was a cool mom."
Hmm.
So, though White had already somewhat suspected that she bore no physical resemblance to Petway, the first real red flag appeared in 2005 when White got pregnant and asked Petway for her birth certificate so she could obtain health insurance. While Petway was stalling, White visited a Connecticut Bureau of Vital Statistics where a clerk was unable to find any record under her name and birth date. She accused White of attempting to obtain false identity and flagged the case to the state's Department of Child and Families. A few days later, Petway confessed that she was not White's birth mother, but claimed White had been abandoned by her parents at birth.
Mm-hmm.
While Petway refused to offer any further information, White's suspicions grew, and she spent the next several years searching for stories of kidnappings in the Bridgeport area. It wasn't until 2010, when she was 23 and living in Atlanta, that she decided to try expanding her search outside of Connecticut and found a photo of a baby who had been abducted in 1987 and looked just like her. Looked just like her own daughter. And she saw this picture on the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's website. She called the hotline, and basically, with the center's help, she was ultimately able to narrow down her search for her birth parents to 2 possible cases. And after they compared the photos, they ultimately determined who they wanted to DNA test, and that DNA test was conclusive. And so she was reunited with her parents.
Imagine finding this out.
Yeah,
That your mother is actually your kidnapper. I can't stop thinking about this. I can't stop thinking about that idea that she was like, I don't know that you
well,
were
the
really
fact that
my
she
mom.
had that suspicion, and then it
Yeah.
just sort of like snowballed to the point where she was like, okay, you're telling me that I was abandoned. I'm gonna start looking into kidnappings. Like, that is wild.
Yes. Mom, Dad, tell me. Tell me the truth.
So that's where the episode ends. It's just like a sad, at the end it's just like sad. We're just, the moms cry,
Yeah.
you cry watching it. It's just like the saddest thing ever. At the very end, they like kick you while you're down and show a bunch of other age progressed photos of other missing children around the United States. So that's a fucking bummer. I yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. They would be in their 30s now. So I guess I really do hope that they're out there and they're still alive and well, and maybe like Carlina, they'll be reunited. I don't know.
Seems pretty unlikely, but I hope so too.
I guess there's a little bit of hope. I mean, I realize there's a lot of sick people in the world, but you kind of want to be like, what does someone want with a 2-year-old? Like, maybe they do just want to raise
Yeah.
them as their own.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess that's, maybe it's naive to want to say that that seems like a more likely scenario, but without any other evidence,
I
okay,
mean,
I'll hope that that's true.
who knows? That's the
Yeah,
thing. You have no idea.
yeah.
It's just sad. I mean, if you have any information on that case and you're listening to this somehow, please, please, please
Wouldn't it be amazing if one of our
let them know.
listeners was like, "Huh, that kind of looks like
Oh yeah.
that kind of sounds like my neighbor," and that would be amazing.
You're like, I think I was at that park. I think I saw that kidnapper. And he was wearing a name tag that said his name and address. Let's go get it. It's like the people that stormed the Capitol wearing their like work lanyards. It's
or
like,
like,
oh, I know who that is.
yeah, oh, that's fine. Guy sits crosses the cube farm for me. Yeah, yeah.
Have I ever talked about on this podcast the time I solved a purse snatching?
I mean, I know you've told me that story, so I don't know if it was on the podcast or not.
Yeah. Maybe I'll save that for the regular
Okay.
podcast. But
Tell
I was
us
just
if you've heard that story, listeners. And
yeah, that's a good point. Did
you'll
I bring that up at some point? Because I'm just thinking about how I was shown a photo from a like security camera and I just went, "Oh, I know who this is." So maybe that's going to happen.
I hope so. God, I hope so.
Well, that's it for reboot content, and I'm not sure we're ever getting any more.
I'm kind
And
of okay with
it's
it.
a relief. It's a relief that we can now talk about something a little more fun, like paranormal home inspectors.
Hell yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do next month, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Can't
Let's
wait.
do that every month.
I can't wait.
But we also, John Waters has been on SVU lately more
Yeah.
than once. So we have to talk about that at some point.
That'll be fun.
That's a necessity. And there's always Beyond Belief. There's always things that aren't about stolen children.
Thank God.
So we can get to some of that content.
Yes.
Oh, our supporters. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you've enjoyed these recap episodes, and hope you're as excited as we are to talk about something else.
Yeah, for real. Okay. Thanks for your money, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, I'll just get into it. Okay, so I'm
Hold
gonna be
on 1 second.
No.
Sorry, hold on 1 second. I think think I'm good. Okay, I have this new recording setup that I made in our like little spare room in the basement because of sound reasons. Except the problem with doing it in the basement is that there's fucking spiders, and this little daddy long leg was like crawling towards me, and I lost track of it, but I think it's gone.
Okay. I do want you to leave in the part where you're just like, whoa. Let's leave that in the recording. Okay. One of the first people we hear from is Daniel Jensen, who's a public safety dude, and clearly like not very interested in investigating this. And he has a huge mustache that's way too dense. I called it the bread loaf. They're just like,
can you imagine kissing that?
No, thank you. I would hand over a razor first.
Okay, hold on. The spider is fucking back. I'm gonna leave it. Give me a second. I don't even know how to. Okay, I don't want to kill you, but I do want you to leave. Okay. Okay, I squished it. Sorry, spider. I just can't deal.
This audio is honestly hilarious, and I think you should put it at the end or something.